Yeah. Oh yeah? I guess so.
Okay. We are live. We are live. We are live. By the way, guys, we're live. If anybody wants to say anything that they want to hear on video, it's on.
I was here. He still sends me his. Depends what comes on.
Sit down.
Who's sitting there? So it's water's there.
This elected.
And they have one of the ends there.
Move this down.
You go crazy.
Yeah.
Are you able to get my eyes? Wearing it?
Yeah. Yeah. This is what I'm holding right now. Yeah. So I'm about halfway through the Torah. I have my fits and starts, but my goal, I have a goal to finish. There's some amazing photos in here. Some pictures, big photos. Every photo is amazing. Yeah. Some beautiful stars in here. All right, I'll let you know what drives us on yeah, I guess like everything I've had the rocks in, so hopefully I can fall through okay by then, you know? I don't look for those pictures. I don't have to manage I'm looking for the stuff that I have them somewhere, but I'll find them. Probably on my computer somewhere. I have from my dinner of 2004. And then I maybe have some on there for a couple of years. Yeah,
Thank you everybody for coming. It's wonderful to be here. Fix the color.
Yeah, I know. I tried it many times.
I didn't know how to. I was scared to do it.
I did the brightness. Are we live?
Just go to the normal.
What do you do it on?
Just go to the normal profile.
Because I looked on the iPad, the brightness was at the top, so I thought it was the iPad.
Yeah, it's the color from the
Super shot.
the white balance.
Go ahead. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, we're on the live.
Okay.
Should be on.
Shkai. So Hashem's a busy morning.
Kal of Rav is here. Hope that some of you hope to be able to stay. We're going to have right afterwards, 11:15, a few minutes to get together downstairs. Usually I'm around Shabbos to Mechazik, then, I don't know, was it announced at all?
Yeah, we sent an email reminder this morning.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so first off, of course, I want to thank Rabbi Nachmani and the family sponsoring the Shiurim, Darchi Avinoam, Zechen Nishmas, Avinoam and Chaim is a Sham Shavali, and hopefully we have Simcha, Nachas, and Brachim. Okay, so we're going to talk about the talk. Finally, I've been promising it for a couple of years, I think. All of the Torahs that we're learning is just the Hachana. I'm going back and forth, thinking of so many ways to try to do this, and reading many things in English and Lashon HaKodesh of people who have tried to make it some sort of a presentation. In the end, there was somebody who sent me this, which was sent to you. I should never sent it to you. You have it on your phone. It's called The Power Within You. It's from the Chevra at Guard Your Eyes. We've had the source of having here, and many of you, I'm sure, know about it. Hope the kids know about it. And I decided that this would be a good way to begin the conversation, because it's written for the boys. It's not written for us. It's written for the guys. And I felt that it was very simple and very clear. And I hope that you'll print it up. When you get home, you'll print it, so we could actually talk about it, and not just on. It's hard to use the phone. It's much easier when you have a piece of paper in front of you. And again, this is only HaTzadik. It's a suggestion. People therapists and Talmidei Chachamim that worked on this to make it something which would be on a level that a typical 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old would be comfortable with. It's going to make us squirm a little bit. And it's not a script. It's just Rashi Prakim of what we could talk about with the kids, how to have a conversation, and it touches upon the whole in a very, very respectful and sensitive way. Obviously, the tachlis of all of this is to be able to make your son or whoever it is you're talking to feel comfortable enough to be able to continue on with the conversation, to be able to come back to his father in the future. Not everything in here is necessarily what each one of you or myself would agree with being part of the conversation, but that's okay. It's the point of doing this inside is to have a chayfetz to use as a way of something to refer back to, and a misgaret, just a framework of conversation. So then afterwards we're going to continue on with some limudim, of course to return to our regular limudim, but it's important to be able to have something where you at least you feel like you're not winging it. It's something that you could actually do with the kid and read together with the kid a little bit, pieces of it, and that's why it was written. It was, I think, originally it was in Lashon HaKodesh. I didn't see the thing in Ivrit. So where it begins, let's just discuss. This will go very, very quickly. It's very straightforward, and I hope that we can talk about it. I want to hear what your thoughts are about it, what your thoughts, and to discuss a mahalach. Of course, every child is different, and you have to have a chush for what your kid is able to be makabel. But there's material here, and then I'll give some other suggestions of things to in Lashon HaKodesh. In English, there's also something that came out from the OU around 12, 13 years ago. It's a whole book that a woman wrote on this subject that was published by the OU. But this is much easier, more straightforward, and more geared towards a yeshiva bacher than anything that I've seen in English, and I thought it would be good to have it in English. Okay, so let's just read it together. I hope you have it. If not, look on your phone. You can get it right now. Where it says, "Dear friend," like the third page, there's some haskama, there's a table of contents, and it says, "Dear friend." You ever see it? You see it? Yes, to make it's a little bit uncomfortable, but remember, Torah he a little bit anachnu tzrichim. We see in Shas, we see the Chazal speak about things in a very, very, very graphic and open way. What I alluded to a second ago, Torah he tells us that there was such a thing where they didn't have in those days, they didn't have back in the time of Chazal. They didn't have publications, and the way the Torah was taught was from a Rebbe to a Talmud. That's how Torah was taught. Torah Shebal Peh. And Chazal revealed to us that there was such a mice that happened where even when it came to a moment of intimacy between the Rebbe and his wife, there was a Talmud that was hiding under the bed to see, and it's hard for us to believe. And the Rebbe said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Torah he, Torah." Now we can't understand what that means. Torah, but it is Torah. In the same way, when you open up Masechta Nida, when you're learning the Gemara, there are parts of there are biological parts of the mother's body that the Gemara discusses very, very openly, even though it's very sweet because the words that are used are always words in a way of kedusha. Nevertheless, to talk openly about these inyanim, that's what the kids need. And anyway, when the fathers feel uncomfortable talking about it, the kids will fill you in that they already know all this stuff. They just know it in a way that's distorted and oftentimes terribly polluted by the street and by guys talking, amongst themselves. They were makabel Torah Shebal Peh from who knows where they got their Torah Shebal Peh from. So we're just going to read and then suggestions and talking about it and to write different ideas and to help others, to help Mitch, your grandfather, to help your kids talk to their children, to open up the conversation. I don't know if we're going to send this out, maybe not. We'll see afterwards if it's something that should be sent out or on tape, we'll decide. Dear friend, every new stage of life. So remember, it's written to the boys. So it's not written for the parents, but it's also written so the parents should be able to talk to the boys about this. Dear friend, every new stage of life brings with it the potential for growth and fresh energy, as well as new questions and challenges. Whether you have celebrated your bar mitzvah yet or not, whether you have just begun attending a new school or not, you are currently in the midst of an important change. You have just concluded your childhood years and are now beginning a new stage of life, that of adulthood. Which, of course, is unbelievably confusing for the kids. Most of us might be already too old to remember what that was like, but it's a terrible, terrible bilbil. That time, discovering that you're not a kid anymore and how to look at yourself and at your body. And let's start with a bit of background as to why this pamphlet is important. There are a number of important ideas that are worthwhile to become familiar during this time. Most parents would prefer to share the information discussed here with their children themselves. However, it's not always easy for parents to find the right time and method to do so. This pamphlet was written following many conversations with young men as well as adults who related how they were never presented with much of the information here when they were your age. Many of them said that had they known these things at the time, it would have saved them a lot of unnecessary pain and hardship, which is the tachlis of what we're talking about, how to save the kids unnecessary pain and hardship. This pamphlet is designed to help make you aware of some of these issues. If after reading it you still have questions, don't keep them to yourself, even if it makes you uncomfortable to talk about them. Your parents, teachers, and rabbis would be happy to talk to you about, that's not true, would be happy to talk to you about them, and will be very impressed. No. If you do so in a mature manner, that's the key. If you do so in a mature manner. I mean, they're trying to be very, very careful, and I appreciate it. So even though I can't help myself, I'll make fun every now and then. But the mice, we wouldn't have written this, and it took a lot of guts for them to write something, and we have to appreciate it, even though we can still have some fun. Okay, growing and thriving with joy. Let's start at the beginning. Growing up involves a lot of changes, some of which have to do with your body, and some that are related to your personality and your inner self. When it comes to your body, which is the first thing to talk about, before getting into anything emotional and how you feel, and just to review with a kid the basic mitzias of who they are, meaning of their bodies. Some of which have to do with your body and some that relate to your personality, your inner self. When it comes to your body, you may have noticed that you can probably run a lot faster now than you could when you were little. This, of course, is because your muscles have grown stronger and developed more. You may also be getting taller and developing an adult body, which is evident from the hair that may be beginning to grow in various places on your body, such as your legs, hands, and face. Your voice may also be beginning to change and become lower and more like that of a man. These changes are all part of the overall process of maturation and growing up. They're normal and natural. That's the main thing, is that the kids should understand this is normal and natural, because it's confusing. It could be terrifying. It's all normal and natural, and mean that you're on the right track and your body is developing properly. Aside from these physical changes, you may also be experiencing quite a few mental and emotional changes. Sometimes you might just want to be alone. You might occasionally want others to stop talking to you and stop asking annoying questions. Sounds familiar? You may also get somewhat frustrated when people don't understand you and are not sensitive enough to your inner feelings, which the kid hasn't articulated within himself, but he expects his parents to get him. One of the most common things they'll say is, "You don't get me. You don't get me, you don't understand me." And then the parent will invariably say something like, "Well, explain." "Adrabah, I want to get you. Tell me, what is it that's upsetting you? What's on your mind?" And most often, there's no klal, sometimes you'll have a kid that's very mature, but most often the child will just get upset when you say that. So on the one hand, you're telling me, "I don't get you." So I want to get you. We all tell the kid, "I want to get you." "I don't get you. I want to. Can you help me?" And then they're just angry. And we don't know, and then you're just lost. You know what to say. "I'm asking you for help. I'd like to understand you." So what the kid would like is for you to understand him without him having to talk about that. Like with Nevi'im or something. But we should understand exactly what he's feeling and going through. He does not want to talk about this. He's uncomfortable talking about it, and he doesn't even understand himself what it is that's causing him to be so upset and so angry. So when we ask the kid, "Could you explain?" So he doesn't just say, "All right, no, I can't." Oftentimes they just get frustrated, but they really can't explain. They don't know how to formulate any of this. It's very embarrassing and uncomfortable, that transition from being a kid to an adult. It's very, very embarrassing. So they want us to understand exactly what it is that they're going through and what they're feeling. We don't. We have some idea, but we don't really know what this particular child is feeling and going through. And there's anger and frustration.
Do they want us to really understand it? They just want us to leave them alone.
I've discussed this with professionals over the years, because they're both true. They want us to leave them alone. You know, like when you're having an argument with somebody that you love, like, for instance, your wife. Not that you ever had, but the rest of us. So, so you're having a conversation, a heated conversation with someone that you love, and then the person says, "Okay, I guess that we're not going to talk about it anymore. It's like it's over, right?" And the person walks away, and you were the one that intimated that I want this conversation to end. But then when the person walks away, you get very angry. And even though you were the one that even suggested that this conversation should be over. We're not getting anywhere, but this should be over. And then she walks away, and then you feel like saying, where are you going? So she said, you told me that you're done. I didn't really mean that. So when the kid really does want you to like get off his case, to leave him alone, but he doesn't really want you to. There's like we see in Chassidus, there's chitzonius halev and there's pnimius halev. The chitzonius halev, the kid just wants you to leave him alone. But then the pnimius halev, he's crying for help. And that's why we just don't know what to do. So we'll say something, try to say something, we say something like Parv, like, I'm here for you. It's like a go-to thing. I'm here for you. Talk to me. I'm. So, and you don't know whether he wants you to leave him alone or he wants to engage. That's the problem. And the answer is he wants both. He does want you to leave him alone, but in the pnimius halev, he wants to be helped. He wants to be helped. He just doesn't know how to cross over from. He doesn't know how to handle those two conflicting feelings. I want him to go away, but I want him to be here with me. And sometimes in that situation, the best thing you could possibly do is just to hold the kid. Because that, on some level, is speaking to the pnimius of who the child is, without forcing him to go to that uncomfortable place in the chitzonius. So just to hold the kid. If he's very, very angry, he might say, leave me alone. But most of the time they will accept that hug and that holding. So they're both true. And throughout all of this that we're going to read now, we should point out think about how the chitzonius of the child would respond and how the pnimius of the child is feeling. And that's really hard. That's why every kid is different. And it's whether you can understand your child and the cues that are being sent to you by that child. Do you really want me to leave you alone? Or if you want me to talk about this later, we don't have to talk about this right now. If you want to think about it, we'll talk about it later. If you don't want to, it's okay. Sometimes we don't. If you say we don't have to talk about this now, and but what do you say? We just hang out someplace, go to a game, or go out to eat or something, hang out a little bit, and then after that, they're able to come back to it. They just on the spot. They were very. They got frozen on the spot. So it's uncomfortable on the spot. But then let's hang. You know what? Forget it. Let's not talk about it right now. Let's go have a good time. Let's go someplace. Go for some ice cream. Go out somewhere, and to play some ball, whatever it is, if you can get somewhere, and to have a good time. And then what will happen very often is the kid will say afterwards, if you want to talk about it, and whenever you're comfortable, the kid has to feel good about it. You may also get somewhat frustrated when people don't understand you and are not sensitive enough to your inner feelings. So this is something that the parents are puzzled by. Even though we did this also, but the parents are puzzled by that because the child wants you to understand on your own his inner feelings. The child wants you to understand what he's feeling. But we're not sure exactly what is it you're feeling right now. Your friends are probably a very important part of your life now, right? That's the big thing, friends. And it's important for you to know what they say about all sorts of things that you think and do. You may sometimes find yourself checking whether what you are doing is the same as what they're doing. So this is the kids, the boys are talking to each other. To them, it's much safer and more comfortable to talk to each other, and they're wondering, like, are you going? What are you going through? Like, what's going on with you? You may sometimes be unsure whether you should follow the crowd or do your own thing. So there are some boys that will talk to a best friend individually. They'll talk to each other. Others will talk to a couple of chevra together. That can be much, much more dangerous. Talking to a whole chevra, because usually in every chevra there's like the Rebbe, And oftentimes the Rebbe is the dumbest of the entire. So how he made himself, nobody made him into a Rebbe, he made himself into a Rebbe. And whoever makes himself into a Rebbe is not a Rebbe. So, and the one who's the Rebbe, so he speaks like authoritatively. Like he's, Zoken Virogel Bakach. And this could be, of course, the beginning of a terrible, terrible journey for your child to be caught up in the distorted thinking of their peers. Even if acting independently is not so easy. Next page. Your mental capabilities are also developing at this stage. You are able to better understand ideas that you encounter. Until they begin to mature, kids are mostly thinking about just what they want, and more in terms of chefts, gavra, but not concepts and ideas. People, things, places, but not to think conceptually. In the early part of their lives, times of their lives, they're not thinking in such a way. They don't have the oisius hamachshava. Again, chassidus, oisius hamachshava. They're not articulating things in the oisius and the letters of thought in their minds. They're just reacting, like biologically, just intuitively. But they're not thinking about ideas. They're not thinking in an abstract way. And the boys that start much earlier, but abstraction is something which comes with this. Hashem Yisbarach made us in such a way that it comes with the physical development. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch gives you the kelim to be able to think about yourself in a more abstract way. That it all happens at the same time. You are able to better understand ideas that you encounter, and you may have started thinking more deeply about things that you read and study. These abilities also allow you to understand better those around you. So for the first time, the child, or the young man, is trying to understand other people, to consider their needs. As we're learning about on Erev Shabbos, we were just talking about this past Erev Shabbos, to be out of your own gvul, to be able to go out of your own gvul. Which is what it means to mature, to go out of your gvul and to begin to think about others, what they need, and to help them more, rather than just focusing on yourself. That's why I've spoken about this many times over the years. But I don't know if there's anything to do about this. Maybe you could try to pick this conversation up with your kids' schools. That it would be such a valuable thing, if not just by the girls, but by the boys. They would find some way of having the boys do things to help other Jews. Like the girls have all these chesed things, and the boys generally do not, because they're afraid of the Bittul Torah. And I'm very sensitive about Bittul Torah as well, but everybody knows what goes on in school, knows that there are plenty of other things that there's Bittul Torah about. And it's such a valuable tool to help them not only contend with other people's problems and help other people with their problems, but to be able to deal with their own problems when they start to look outside of themselves. So what happens very often, what's happening all the time, is that the girls are raised thinking about others. The girls are involved in all kinds of chesed things. They take them on all these things, and they go to people's homes, and they help the woman that had a baby, whatever. The girls, they're busy thinking outside of themselves. And the boys are busy with two ways of thinking. One is, just as a child, about myself, what makes me happy, what I like. And then whatever they're learning in the morning also, their learning is 99% of it is abstract learning. Right? It's all theoretical. And they're learning Elam Metzias, whether they're learning Elam Metzias or they're learning Hamevi Get, whatever it is that they're learning in yeshiva, is abstract. It's not something that they're experiencing. So then they're 20 years old, and the shadchan's trying to put these two together. You understand what we're talking about here? This is almost doomed from the start. They're going to have to go through terrible, terrible, painful things to be able to work this out. The girl was trained from the time that she's young, especially if it's an old-fashioned household where I'm not getting to any political stuff, but if it's an old-fashioned household where the girls from an early age are helping their mothers in the kitchen, cleaning up, and so on and so forth. Not that the boys shouldn't be helping. That's very, very important, especially now. It's very important. But again, more traditional, where the girls are cooking and busy and so on. The girls from a very, very early age, they're doing for somebody else. They're living for other people. The mother will give the baby, if there's a little baby, the mother will give the 7-year-old girl to take care of the infant, right? Maybe the son. Usually it's instinctive to trust the girl with the baby. There are many good reasons for that, and so from the beginning, this little girl is taken outside of her gvul. She is taken beyond herself, and she's living in a place of transcendence, of something higher than herself, of doing for others. Where our boys are continuing on, not necessarily being asked to do for others. Oftentimes getting annoyed if a mother will ask or a father will ask even for a small little, I don't want to use the word favor, because it's not a favor, it's a responsibility. Getting annoyed if the parents ask, could you clean your room? Like something crazy like that. Could you put your shoes in a place where your grandmother doesn't trip and fall down the stairs? Something outrageous to ask for, and the boys will get on the Rosh Kol B'nei Agayla. How dare you even ask me to move my shoes? It's a bit tired. And this is so on the one hand, they're not being taught. The parents are intimidated, and in yeshiva they're not being taught for the most part. There might be some schmooze about it, but Erev Shabbos the bell's going to ring in a half hour. They're not being taught lemaisa, but the whole mitzvahs of giving and doing for somebody else, and then their learning is also much more abstract than the learning that the girls are doing. The girls are usually learning things, they're studying things that are much more hands-on and much more practical. So this is a meeting that takes place between chassan and kala. Then after they're married, if husband and wife, where the entire upbringing is very, very different. Aside from the teva, that's very different. The teva that's so different, the zach and the keva, chassan kala. And on top of that, the entire upbringing is different. And even without realizing it, the expectations that we have of our little girls, even without realizing, because we're wired like that, is for them to help them to take care of this and that. Well, the guy can sit there.
But it's always been like this.
Correct.
So it's not something that this generation specifically. It was always that way.
Yeah, it's always been a problem. You're right. It's always been a problem. It's not. Is the problem greater in our times for many reasons? Yes, which we can talk more about. Yeah, it's become amplified. In our times. One of the great threats to this entire thing, that like I was mentioning about the girls, is that the great equalizer is the technology. When I say great, I mean horrible. Equalizer is technology, because the little girl or that girl is just as fixated on her phone, even more so, because they're nuts with their friends, more than the boys. So now the girls are being taken away from their mothers by the phone. The boys are being taken away by their program and their learning and whatever, their curriculum, and the girls are being taken away by their chat groups, whatever their stuff. So the parents are just they're just left with kids that are wrapped up in their own worlds. They're not thinking outside of themselves, because the phone does not make you into a person that thinks outside of yourself. That's not, even though they're constantly talking to other people. I don't have to explain it. That's not about. It's all about yourself. The phone is all self-indulgence and narcissism. That's what the phone is all about. It's just what others think about you, and what others, how often they want to connect to you, and so on and so forth, and approvals and disapprovals. It's all self-centered. The phone is all self-centered. Even though, of course, the girls and the kids are reaching out. Are you okay? Is everything okay? It's just these are all ways of making sure that they have those connections for themselves. It's not about reaching out. The way to reach out is in your own family to begin with, and that's how children were raised traditionally, especially the girls. So the girls from an early age are yotzos migvulan. They go out of their gvul. They go out of the borders. In our house, the older kids were like mommies. They were helping my wife, and not only did that open them up to seeing other people, but it also would help them in the future be mothers. Where they didn't see this as being an overwhelming thing that's getting in the way of my aerobics class. This is life. And when you grow up in a house and you're starting to have a bunch of kids, and the older kids are helping with the younger kids, so then when they become parents themselves, they grew up in the base medrash of parenting. The base medrash of parenting is not going to a parenting class. The base medrash of parenting is being with parents. That's the base medrash of parenting. And when, especially with girls, when from an early age, they themselves are parenting. And it's the sweetest thing for me to watch with my grandchildren. So I'll see my granddaughter holding the baby and talking to the baby. Now that same kid might get into a fight with her brother and will act like a kid, which is good. She's a kid. And the two kids that are fighting, it's a brother and sister fighting. But then 5 minutes later, I'll see that same granddaughter holding a younger one and reading a story and being a mommy. That's how Hashem's Baruch wanted it to be. If people are not everybody's to have children, everybody should be healthy and well, and they should be to have healthy children. So we shouldn't take this for granted. But that's the Seder HaDoros. That's the generations. That's how we train them. Now the boys, it has always been a problem with the boys. But the main reason why it's more of a problem these days than in the past is because never before has a typical boy stayed in yeshiva for so long like he does now. In the earlier years, until this generation, 90% plus of the boys went to work when they were 16, even earlier, even younger, 14, 15, 16 in the Heim, 14, 15 years old. They went with their fathers. They went with the uncle. They went to work. They weren't staying in yeshiva till they were 20, 21, Beis Medrash 23. There was a tiny percentage of Bachrim that stayed in yeshiva. That the gifted ones, the ones that were going to become Rabbanim or Dayanim or something, they stayed in yeshiva. But how many were in all of Poland and Russia and Lithuania and Hungary? How many were in the yeshivas when they were? I'm talking about 100 years ago. How many were in the yeshivas when they were 18, 19, 20, 21? How many guys were in yeshiva? They were working. They were on the farm. Or they were in the factory. Whatever it was, they were working. They weren't there. So already by the time they were 15, 16, they were becoming acculturated in the life of helping. Because oftentimes they were taken, at an early age, they were taken to apprentice for the father, to help the grandfather, to go out in the field with the uncle, to help your uncle. That's how they were raised. They were doing for others. They were doing for others. So that's, in our generation, this is something which is new. In other words, where every single boy is expected to stay in yeshiva, I'm not saying whether you agree or don't agree. This is the mitzvah. Where every boy is staying in yeshiva, 17, 18, 19, 20, but he can learn, he can't learn, whether he can sit or he can't sit. He has to be in that building until it's acceptable for him to leave. He has to stay in that building. And in that building, the story is not about giving and doing for others. Again, there are things there. Of course, every boy in every yeshiva have the guys that are helping and doing the ones that were naturally inclined that come from the side of chesed and they're doing for other guys. Yeah, every yeshiva there were boys like that. And oftentimes those are the boys that were being made fun of by the other boys. That they weren't the learners. They were the chesed people. They weren't the sharpest guys. They were the chesed guys. So it's a whole different dynamic with the boys and the girls. And by the girls, the girls who were most admired were the ones who were able to do most for other people. By the boys, the ones who were generally most admired were the ones who did nothing for anybody except themselves. You hear what I'm saying? Any rebuttal? It's just those are the ones who were most admired. The ones who were the sharpest, the brightest, and could slug up. Adrabah, you were the most admired if you could make your charusa feel like nothing. And if you were able to make the Rebbe, if you were able to stump the Rebbe, then you were the upcoming Gadol Hador. And remember, it's not like, again, compared to the earlier years. It's just the necessities of life are not the same as they used to be. Life is much better now. It's much easier. So even when you were the 14, 15-year-old yeshiva bacher back in Poland, Hungary, or Yemen, or Morocco, there were tons of things you had to do just to have milk. Everybody got involved. You couldn't stay in your room on your phone. You had to do stuff. You were busy, so you were wrenched out of yourself. Whether you wanted to or not, you did not have the luxury like the boys have nowadays. So even when they're ben hazmanim, they're just thinking about themselves too. Summer camp, my favorite vacation, my favorite way to spend time, my favorite friends, everything's about me. 100 years ago, what do you say? It's my favorite cow. Boker Tov. But the house should be functioning. The house, whatever they lived in, the hovel, they should be able to live. The boy had to be up 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever, to help and to do. It was just that's how life was, or else they would die. The kid had to be out in the field. Also, they're going to starve. So you can't compare our generation. I mean, these are the last few generations. You can't compare to how it was. So the boys, even though there's always been this difference between Zach and the Keva, but Afam Pichein, the boys were the life itself required more of a Yitziyim and Hagvulim, going out of your comfort zone. You can have boys that when they're home, they stay in their rooms, they close the door, they stay in their room. The father say, "You alive?" Knocking on the door. We didn't see you for the last 3 days. What's going on? But to have such a Metzias in the old days, he didn't have his own room. Who had his own room? How many people had the Graf Patotsky? Maybe who had their own room? They grew up with 5, 6 kids in a room or something. A bunch of kids, or 2, 3 kids in a room. And also, when you grow up and you have 2, 3 kids in your room, with the leis breira, you have to accommodate somebody else's life. Because you have to live with that kid in the same room. But all the tachlis of our lives is to be able to afford to buy a home where every kid has his own room. That means he doesn't have to be sensitive to anybody at all. He can make noise as loud as he likes. He can snore as loud as he wants. He'll do whatever he likes. Because he doesn't even have a roommate. He doesn't even have a roommate. So that's how I grew up. It was my sister had another room, and I had my room. And then you get to yeshiva, and then you have all of a sudden a roommate. Roommates are almost always annoying. And they find you also to be annoying. And then all of a sudden you have to live in such a way where you can't turn on the light whenever you want. I had this roommate in yeshiva that he would brush his teeth for like an hour at night. When I say at night, it was like at 2 in the morning. He would stand at the mirror. He always wore a jacket and tie. Always. I mean, even when he went to bed. He would go to bed, and I would always say, Ruth, why don't you make yourself comfortable? He said, I'm just resting a little bit, going back to his measures. So it was in the morning, he'll wake with his tie, his necktie on and everything like that. Standing at the mirror, brushing his teeth for an hour. I never saw such a thing in my life. But that's the point. seeing things that you never saw in your life and being able to deal with it. But our kids are not challenged like that. Maybe when they get roommates in yeshiva or something like that, but otherwise, your kid never has to, you don't want your kid to ever have to see anything that he never saw in his life. Because the poor baby, that might be hard for him. It might be hard for him. There's something different. In other words, he has to accommodate another person. You have to calm yourself down and say, my roommate's nuts, but I'm going to have to deal with it. I'm going to have to deal with something different than me. That's a big thing to ask of somebody, you know? To deal with something different than yourself. And then we're wondering why we're not ready to be parents and we're having such a hard time with our kids. Because there's nobody that's more different than your own kid. Especially when they're like little babies and with little kids making trouble and doing all kinds of things. We weren't prepared for this. We wanted to have everything just nice and everything taken care of, quiet. So then if you're really successful, then you could hire someone to take care of your kids. Because the little kids that didn't want to have anything different, they grow into adults that also don't want to have any challenges. They don't want to have any kids that are crying and making them crazy. And then that's the Masorah that goes on and on. I don't know where it's going. But that's the challenge of our generation. Nothing should be hard for me. Nothing should be different. Shlomo Melech in Kohelet speaks about all the Mahalchim Tachas HaShemesh. The Baalei Mussar would say, Hashem's Baruch made life in such a way where people are so different from each other. All the Mahalchim Tachas HaShemesh means that Hashem's Baruch wants us to learn how to go out of ourselves to understand other people and how to deal with other people. But you see, we've spoken about this 1,000 times. Now, if you're 31 years old, you only want to daven in a shul where there are people tops 35, 27, 35 maybe. But then you have to already need a different shul. If you can have a couple of old guys in the shul, it takes them, especially if they have to put them up because older people tend to have more yahrzeits. That's how it goes. So then you get some older guy up and he wants to daven for the Amud, and all the young guys are like they're just waiting for the kiddush and for the davening to end, and you get this old guy gargling up there by Yosef, and then so now the main thing is to have a shul where everybody's your age. Everybody has to be the same age in shul. Because if you have somebody that's different, that's a challenge. Different means, not talking about a guy. There's no guy in shul. I'm talking about a Jew. But that Jew is 20 years older than you. What does that mean? It means there are no chairs, you got to give him a chair. It means that if he davens, for the Amud, you might have to be more patient. It could mean a couple of other things. It might mean going over and striking up a conversation with him, and he's telling you stuff that you're not interested in. You have to have a conversation with someone who's not like you. That's not comfortable. Everybody wants to talk to people who are like them. I have to talk to some guy, he's 30 years older than me, and I have to make like I'm interested because he's telling me about his arthritis or something, and I say, ooh, that must be hard for you. You just want to talk about the Super Bowl, and he's talking about arthritis. That's a challenge. You don't want that, because that's different than you. But that's exactly what the Creator wanted. The Baruch Shalom wants you to be among people. Every single person that you meet is challenging you to go beyond yourself, to go higher than yourself, to go outside of yourself, to disagree with you. That's what. Then when it says Eza Kenegdo, so you're saying you're learning Pashas Bereishis the whole time, and you get married, and then you're sitting there in his Pashas Bereishis, and you're being Mavis Sedri, and your wife's sitting on the other side of the table, and you see it says Eza Kenegdo, and you're saying the words Eza Kenegdo, and you look up, and you want to see if she's looking at you. And then you really, for the first time in life, understand what that means, Kenegdo. Imzocha, Moizocha. To live with somebody, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to live in the same house with somebody that's Kenegdo. But that's not the experience that the kids have when they grow in our generation more than ever before. They can't be a Kenegdo. It's all about likes. It's all about approval. It's all about what you consider the kids consider to be normal. That group of friends are normal. What about the kid that's different? Let the nerds stay with each other. My friends are all cool. My friends are all normal. You tell your son, I want you to, if you see a boy in yeshiva that's a little bit different, that's having a hard time, see if you can befriend him. But the boys are not from the beginning. They're taught from the beginning to be for themselves. This is a huge problem. Let's just finish the paragraph. So maturing means these abilities also allow you to understand better those around you, to consider their needs, and to help them more, rather than just focusing on yourself. These mental capacities will allow you to slowly develop your own values, which will motivate you to take part in or decide not to take part in